Back to the Unstuck movement. I am your host, Rob Z. Today we have the incredible Dominika Staniewicz with us. I love to jump into these episodes with a powerful question because questions create breakthrough in our lives. So Dominika, what is the difference between activity and action, and how has that difference changed your life?
You just asked my favorite question. First of all, thank you for having me, and hello to everybody who's listening. It's my absolute pleasure. So, what is the difference between activity and action? It's huge. We actually don't need action, we need activity. And why am I saying that? Well, because action is a one time spur of the moment burst of energy. You just go, you take action, and there's no follow up. See, you cannot be on a high 24/7. What you do need is little tiny activities that you do every day that are minute, might seem even unimportant. But because you repeat them over and over, first of all, you become great at them. Second of all, you get a chance to celebrate and praise yourself. Third of all, you build grit. And grit has been proven in every study to be the soul and the most important part of success. It is doing the prescribed activity when you don't feel like it. It is getting up in that morning and doing that meditation or exercising, whatever that is. And it's not even about the length, it's about the repetitiveness and holding yourself accountable, which builds internally integrity. Because if you cannot keep the word you gave to yourself, you are out of integrity. And if you are, then you don't trust yourself. And if you don't trust yourself, you do not take on life. You do not take on challenges. And you do not really go forward with your dreams because you don't trust yourself that you will commit and follow through. And then that goes into following through in your daily life. So activity is a daily prescribed small things that you do, like meditation, having morning routine. And it doesn't have to be 5 hours long. It can be a 5-minute thing. It's making one phone call to a client. It is saying something nice to one person every day. It is concentrating on receiving whatever is your mission, goal, vision of who you want to be. Ask yourself, what is the prescribed activity that I get to celebrate and feel great about and do every day, that it becomes part of my being, part of my existence, and it stacks. So it's kind of like learning how to walk. You know, when you're a little kid, you crawl, but you do it every day without even thinking about it. And at the beginning it's hard, but when the crawling is easy, then you start, standing up and taking steps. And that becomes easy. So then you start walking, but your legs are short and wobbly, so it takes you forever to walk a mile. But when you pass that, you have long legs because you grew and your activity made you an expert in that thing. So that's why activity, not action.
I love that. I've already taken some notes. So we're going to have a lot of conversation here to dive into. First of all, before we go even any deeper into this, I want to shout out the Connected Leaders Academy, who are the sponsor for this podcast and makes it possible. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. And Dominika, just to give some background on who she is, she's an elite neuroencoding specialist, the brain coach and author of The Magic of Dreaming Big, Acting Small, and Achieving Success. Combines neuroscience expertise with practical strategies to help you overcome challenges and achieve your dreams. Trained by Dr. Amen and Joseph McClendon III, she empowers individuals to turn ADHD into a superpower, which I can't wait to talk about, and encode happiness and success in their DNA. So it's really an honor to have you here, and just the fact that you're a brain coach is exciting to me. I just love the term in itself. It elicits so many exciting conversations and so many exciting questions inside of me. What you were just mentioning right there is so big, right? A prescribed activity. When I hear you talking about activity, I hear the word habit, right? The habits that we build into our life. Do you find a differentiating factor between activity and habits? Do those two things mean something different to you?
So activity is a chosen behavior. It can become a habit, but habit is a further down the road when grit comes into play and you just do it not thinking about it. Your brain is designed to optimize everything, and it optimizes our behaviors without us even knowing about it.
Hmm.
So the challenge is recognizing where the optimization is happening, and we didn't choose to optimize that. And that's with beliefs, with behaviors, and everything you do. The way I move my hand, it's also a habit. I'm not thinking about it. So activity is something you choose to get to a certain destination where you want to go, with for a woman with the flow, for a man with the target that you have. And notice I differentiate the vocabulary, and there's a reason for that. And depending on a brain type and who you are, you actually go towards a certain area that you chose. And that's where
Mm.
activity comes in. And when it becomes so natural that you don't have to choose it, you just do it automatically, it becomes a habit. Now, the danger of the habit is that if you stay with the same habit over and over again, you're going to get stuck at one point somewhere. So you will need to stop the habit and go back to activity, which will get you further, make you go faster or achieve other things. Because when we achieve our goal, we get the dopamine and oxytocin release, and also serotonin, which is actually more important than dopamine. Most people don't know that. And we go, yay, I did it. It's 3 days. I'm so fantastic. I'm so awesome. And then you're like, okay, what's next? And when it happens, what's next is if you keep in that habit, nothing next is happening. So that's where you revert back into activity, which is unnatural. But because it's an activity, not an action, your brain doesn't resist because it's not too difficult. So that thinking, the dreaming big, acting small is key. The small activity, not the big spur of the moment thing that you do. Because what we tend to do, it's like when we have the New Year's resolutions, we know that by week 6, 90% of people already quit. Why? Because the change was too big. And that's one of the things that is so important to know, that being out of your comfort zone, yes, it's important, but do not make this something that is in every area of your life. Your brain can actually handle up to 20% of change, and then it can adjust, but the change has to be prescribed for you. So your brain goes, that's interesting. Okay, I can do this. But if you change everything at once, it shuts down and you basically stop doing anything and revert to your old habits. And you're not in the activity anymore.
That's really interesting. It's a great way of looking at it. So even if you develop good habits into your life, you still need to be in the practice of changing those up and adding new activity in, so that you don't become bored, so your brain doesn't become bored or like complacent with the habits. Is that the idea behind that?
Not really. So habits basically become automatic. And let's say what serves a teenager, a habit that serves a teenager, will not serve most likely a person who's 30 years old.
Hmm.
And when you're 40 and you're in a different path of your life, you're having different goals and visions of your life and dreams for your life, the habits from age of, how many things have you changed? Because I used to react very differently to different things. I used to think that I need to work 16 hours a day. I used to think a lot of things, really.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then when you sit down and you fall into the rhythm of a habit, you lose perception of what's important. So it kind of, the habit is kind of going on autopilot. And autopilots are good for a period of time when we need to relax, when we need to rest. We cannot be changing 24/7. That's impossible. That's just absolutely crazy. Plus, neuroplasticity happens when we're asleep, not when we're doing things, unless it's a traumatic event. So the idea is that habits are the smooth riding when you want to just enjoy the fruits of whatever you did. But as a human, 99.9% of population, after a while, like, you got a raise. You are so excited. This is a new raise and I have so much more money. I guarantee you a month after, you're like, okay, well, I don't see much change. It became normal. And
Yeah.
when it becomes normal, that's when I go, okay, this was a habit, right? This was created. I was in the flow. I was enjoying. This was time to decompress. This was time for me not to do anything. What else do I want? And the moment the question shows up, what else do I want? And is what I'm doing getting me where I want to go? That's where the activity comes back in.
That makes perfect sense, and that's really good because it's like leveling up, and as you level up, the things that once were such a big goal or such a big implementation into your life just become the natural part of your life. And once upon a time, this thing, I'll give from an example for myself, taking jujitsu. I've been taking jujitsu for close to 3 years now. When I first started taking it, was like everything. It was like everything in my life was changing, and I had like so many. It was like such a dramatic change to how I looked at life and treated life. Now it's just like something else that I do. So I have to add in new activities to keep that going. That's on a practical level for myself. That's a really cool way of looking at that, because that makes a ton of sense that once something is no longer novel, like new activities come in to keep you, the way I'm looking at it is leveling up, right? And that just continues to happen. That's really, really good.
And I would invite everybody before they do that to enjoy when they achieved whatever they wanted to achieve.
Right.
Give them time to take a breath, because your brain uses a lot of energy and a lot of power, mind power, when you introduce new things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it would be very dangerous to just keep leveling up and not having that time to decompress and enjoy the fruits. The enjoying the fruits of what you've done and celebration is so key for quality of the life. And I can talk about, that's a different subject, but quality of life depends on the amount of times you celebrate. And here men are absolute the best examples how we should do that. If you want to know, I'll tell you later.
Yeah, tell me, how do you celebrate when you hit a place, hit that like plateau of, or reach that new thing you've been trying to accomplish? So you're not trying to constantly achieve, you want to enjoy the thing. And I talk about this all the time in my coaching. You need to celebrate your successes. What does that look like for you practically to do that?
So first of all, I don't celebrate successes. I celebrate my daily activity, and that changes everything. Because the fact that I did what I promised myself I would do gets me closer to the goal that's far away. What happens is everybody has, and I do a workshop on this with every one of my clients so they can discover. Interestingly enough, we very often say, oh, pat yourself on the back. Well, in a lot of cultures, patting yourself on the back is being patronizing. It doesn't correlate with celebration. For me, it's dancing and doing something I took, Joseph McClendon talks about astitude. For women, I created breastitude. If you look at cultures all over the world, we use our chest to celebrate and be happy, and we move our arms, and it brings out joy and releases dopamine and oxytocin, and it gives us the feminine flow. Now, for me, it's dancing and music and singing and doing the breastitude. And that's how I celebrate. I also raise my voice higher, because if you look at the past, when we grow and develop, our celebrations are not static. That's the biggest mistake adults make. We go, yay. Hell no. Heck no. That's not how it works. Your brain doesn't release anything. It doesn't do anything for your nervous system if you go, yay. I want you to, if you're a man, have you ever watched sports?
Yes, as a man, I have watched sports.
Great. And probably looks like this. I'm not going to celebrate until they win. I'm not going to celebrate. No. You go, oh my God, he moved. Oh yeah, go. They freaking haven't won. For 4 hours, you celebrate their tiny, minute movements, no matter the outcome. You are using your whole body, you're using your voice, you're using your whole being. And you actually, no matter the outcome, most of the time had an amazing time for 4 hours. No matter if they won or not. And what's interesting enough, you give more energy to celebrate people who you will never meet, don't know who they are. And for 4 hours, you're giving your whole being to celebrating something that has nothing to do with you. What if we will take that gift that men have of getting engaged in sports when you guys celebrate, and translate that into your daily life, where you could celebrate those, hey, he moved 2 feet or whatever, past the ball, hit the ball, whatever they did, and you celebrate with your whole body. Then what happens is, because your brain is connected to your gut and to your body, you actually release endorphins. You actually release serotonin. You actually release dopamine. It feels good. And when it feels good, your brain goes, that felt good. If it felt good, then I think I want to do it again. And to bring it back to very simple things. If physical pleasure between men and women, men and men, sexual encounters were not pleasurable, we would be extinct. What drives is the pleasure factor in your brain, which is the same actually area of your brain when it comes to pleasure that comes with cocaine, drug addiction, and everything else, and sugar. So, but we can now harness that knowledge. Notice that when you go outside and you look at somebody, you know that they're depressed or in a bad mood, and they haven't said a word to you. How do you know that? Because the brain is connected to the body. They have a specific way of sitting, specific way of breathing. Have you ever breathed deeply when you were depressed? Heck no. It's a shallow breathing and you feel lightheaded and you're stressed and you're tense. There's so many now knowledge, scientific knowledge we have about the brain that we can break those patterns. So celebration for me is what I've explained. And I invite everybody to go back into their childhood and look up to the age of 7 when they were happy as kids. How did they act? What did they do? And guess what? None of you will say, I did this.
Yeah, it's a natural response, right? It's built into us. It's really funny you mentioned sugar. Like if I eat a cookie or something, I'll usually dance around while I'm eating it. I'll wiggle my body as I'm eating the thing. That makes me laugh just thinking about it, because it's really true. It's like, and that's that natural response that comes out. So if we have and this happened to me earlier. I was doing a podcast earlier. It was a really good conversation, and I'll probably do it after this one too, because it's another really good conversation. And I got up out of my chair and did a little dance after it ended, because I love doing it, and it just makes me feel excited, makes me feel alive. And great conversations do that to your brain, right? They're firing you said the serotonin's more important than the dopamine, right?
So dopamine is a happy hormone and serotonin is a happy hormone, but serotonin is also connected with adrenaline and activity. Dopamine is the one that you sit with your loved one, you feel comfortable, you feel loved, you feel safe, and you feel happy and joyful. But there is no push for activity. And serotonin, if serotonin is up, dopamine falls down. If dopamine goes up, serotonin falls down. So we need both. So if you go only towards serotonin, then you're being one of those people who jumps out of planes 24/7, out of cliffs. And that's not good either, because that means it shuts down your prefrontal cortex. Funny thing with our brain is that it operates, for example, if you're very logical and very structured, you're usually not very creative. And that is because when your prefrontal cortex is working hard, the areas of your brain responsible for creativity shut down. Creativity, notice, comes when you're in a shower. Creativity comes when you're bored. That's when you're not planning. We need to be bored to be creative. We need to be in that shower. And I have notepads and recordings in the shower, because ideas come in the shower. Or when I'm sitting and just walking, oh my God, I got to do this. And often I cannot even record a video because I look like crap. I have my pigtails or, ponytail and walking around in a park, and I have this brilliant idea. So I write it down. But it happens when you're not planning. It happens when you're bored. It happens when you're doodling. So it's very important to understand, because your brain, when we're coaching, your brain is actually responsible for everything. Your psychology is dependent on a functioning of the organ called the brain.
Fascinating. This is really interesting. So we have to shout out the sponsor, the Connected Leaders Academy, for 60 seconds. But when we come back after the 60 seconds, I want to dive into your own personal journey, overcoming tragedies that you went through that shaped your professional journey, and what you're doing today. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out. on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Dominika, this is a fascinating conversation. I want to just acknowledge, first of all, thank you for all that you shared so far. A lot of wisdom and a lot of expertise. And I'm going to be going back and going through my notes on this just to refresh my own memory and help myself through this conversation. But how did you overcome? What have you overcome in your life that led you to the place you're at now? How did that play a role in everything that you do?
Oh gosh, I have quite a robust story. So that would definitely take more time than we have. So I'm going to shorten it down.
Cool.
I came from Poland, and in Poland, I was born in Poland, and I came here to the US. I graduated high school here. Then I was, let's just say, a troubled teenager. So my parents kicked me back alone to Poland. I was 19 and, went to college, had a kid. Unfortunately, my son, who was born when I was 19, passed away when he was 16 months. Don't say I'm sorry. It was the biggest gift. And that there is a story behind that as well, because I did learn how to love here and now on the spot without worrying if I am going to love too quickly, too slow, show too much, show too little. I just love, period. It's out there. And that was a lesson from my son, who was absolutely amazing little human. And then I went through a period of 3.5 years of depression. I do not remember a thing from those 3.5 years, not a thing. I got my degrees in sociology, Masters of Science. I got my degree in education. And I became one of the top leading experts in Poland, advising Polish government and working with the top leaders and European Union and commenting and projecting labor market based on the laws and the projections and all the data and numbers. And I was great at it. I missed it once for 12 or 15 years. And I was more masculine than Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone put together. Let's just say the fact that I had friends, I think it's amazing. I called all my friends after I grew as a person, as a woman. I said, thank you for being so strong and for believing, because I have no clue how you survived with me. In the meantime, I got married, I got divorced, I had twins that I was raising on my own. And one day I woke up about 30, and I said, this cannot be life. There has to be more to life than this. And I faced the truth that the only common denominator is me. It's not the world, it's me. So if it's me, I have to look at me and start doing something about it, because I don't like this experience called life. Yes, I'm successful. Yes, I have money. Yes, I have companies that I'm building, selling. I'm advising CEOs. I'm traveling the world. I hate my life. I'm miserable. And that's where my journey with personal development started. At that time, coaches were not really known. I did hire a coach, and she was like the third person I hired after a therapist, a psychologist. And she was amazing, because I literally could go past within a very short period of time. And don't get me wrong, some therapists and psychologists are absolutely amazing. I'm not, for me at that time, that was the best solution, because she was working with things here and now and moving past them instead of dabbling in the things that, were painful.
Yeah.
And after I grew, then it was Tony Robbins events, books, personal development. And I stopped coaching in career area, because I used to be a career coach, because of what I was doing was kind of a logical thing, predicting labor market and advising CEOs. At the end of the day, they were looking for new jobs. And I came to the US because the government changed. And the new government in Poland said, either you will speak more favorably about the changes we're making, or you might not have a job. And because I believe in my integrity, which sometimes is very painful, I said, I appreciate that, and you're not paying me. I'm the outside expert for Business Center Club, which is the biggest organization of employers. And I'm working with them. And that's why I'm an outside expert, and my opinion is valid, and broadcasted in the media. They go, okay. And just to be fair, it wasn't only me. There were quite a few of us. Over 100 people got the same phone call. So within 2 weeks, I received phone calls from my other friends at media saying, hey, we can't work with you anymore. You're on the list. I'm like, okay. So I took one suitcase, sold my company, left my house, left everything, and came to the US. And then I thought, of all my experience, my master's degrees and everything I had. I mean, recruiting HR for 20 years, a professor at a university for 15 years. I mean, you ask, I have it. So the only job I was offered in the US at that time was separating hangers at a warehouse with convicts.
Hmm.
That was quite painful to my ego, let's just say. It was shattering.
Yeah.
And being a US citizen, that was just, how is this happening? Well, the area I was in, I'm not saying that's all US, but the area I was in believed that if my experience is not in the US, then it's worthless. And that belief system translated into what I could get. So I started climbing up. And then one day when I was at a middle level, about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it took me 2 years to climb out of that interesting place that I was in. Very teaching, great experience for managers. If you've been managing too long, get a job like this. You change your management style in 5 seconds after that experience. But that's a different story. And I ran into Joseph at UPW with Tony Robbins, and he was running a program with Dr. Amen, who is a world-class neuropsychiatrist, and Joseph is a neuropsychologist. Dr. Amen works with all NFL players, and we restored their brains after so many years of getting beat up, so their personality doesn't change, and so they can have a great life. So we restore because your brain is actually able to restore.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Amen does that with NFL players and works with them, and also a lot of stars. And they created a program called Brain Revolution. And I fell in love because I'm science-based. And I started taking the courses, and needless to say, almost 4 years later, both of the gentlemen don't do the program together anymore, but both of them have calls every week with additional knowledge. I've never been inside. We already got certified a long time ago, yet every week, every organization, Amen University and the Neuroencoding Institute provide us with trainings every week to upgrade our knowledge. Sometimes I don't know what to do with that knowledge because it's just overwhelming and it's fascinating. And it's a lot of neuroscience. And I topped that off with Stanford studies and Dr. Huberman, who I absolutely love and learn a lot from, to top that off with. And then when I grew that part of my coaching, I also realized that my femininity blossomed and my vocabulary changed and the way I approach things changed. So then I created, which is right now being formalized, a Leadings Ladies Club, which is where we translate the beautiful things men have created over the centuries into feminine language and into feminine style of being. So instead of getting leads, we create connections. Instead of pressing through, burning boats, we create options, etc., etc. There's a whole philosophy because it is amazing, and nothing to do with men. I mean, that's how history was built. Men were in power, men were running companies, men were scholars, men were reading, men were learning. So they created so many amazing things. But in the last 60 years, women became entrepreneurs. And the only example we had was a male and men-like way of leading and running a company. So now men are complaining that women became very masculine. Well, we had no other examples. Like, we literally did it. I mean, who in our history? Nobody really. You might find one or two. Even Cleopatra was more masculine than feminine, Femme fatale type of thing. And anyway, so that's one part. And the second part, because of the brain coaching, everything is infused in neuroscience. What I do for women in that club, as well as what I do for people with ADHD, depression, self-doubt, self-loathing, overwhelm, which is a big thing, low self-esteem. Those are my core things. So those are my two legs that I absolutely love, because you know what? I'm so proud to say that most of my clients don't need me within 6 months. 80 to 90%. And the truth is that if you're having a coach on the same subject or a therapist on the same subject for more than a year, change a coach or change the therapy sessions to a different approach. Unless you have been in a dungeon, raped every day, beaten every day for 20 years, most issues do not require more than a year. So it is very important to understand that we are not a permanent solution. We're here. I believe that I'm here to give you tools to rewire your brain so you have the ability to move on. And if, life becomes life and it comes back with something new, I'm happy to welcome you back in. But when I hear about people being in therapy for 20, 30 years, that means it just didn't work.
Yeah, I feel like with therapy, because I've been in therapy, and I have a counselor, and I have a coach, and I have a mentor, 2 mentors, right? So I've noticed that therapy is really, really helpful, but you can then stay stuck in the past and you stay stuck in the traumas, and it does not bring you necessarily out of that. So you need, like, coaching is so good because, like you said, it works with the here and now and what's coming up in the future. What am I working towards? And we're not sitting there ruminating in the past stuff, which is, I think, necessary for the right person at the right time. And for a certain period of time, it is very helpful. But after a while, it can become unintentionally like self-indulgent, that you're
Absolutely.
swimming in this stuff over and over again.
Like hoarding, that's definitely therapy stuff. That's not coaching.
Yeah.
OCD, heavy OCD, that's definitely therapy. That's not
Yeah.
coaching. There are a lot of places for therapy, and there are some amazing therapists, some amazing psychologists, some amazing psychiatrists, because they specialize in things.
Yeah.
On the other hand, sometimes you need a different approach. And I've tried 4 therapists and none of them were for me. But I did have one psychologist that I enjoyed talking to. It made me feel better, but it didn't move me forward. So, and I think there are different stages. Some people do great with therapists, and more power to them. Stay if it's working and you're moving forward. It was interesting. I had a conversation with this lady and she goes, "Oh, I have a great coach." And this is about a coach. And I'm like, "Fantastic." And she goes, "I work with him for the last 3 years." I'm like, "Fantastic. So what progress have you made?" And she goes, "Well," I'm like, "Aren't you in the same place I've known you? You were 3 years ago." You might be right. So if your coach, you've been coaching with one person for 3 years and you're still in the same place, change a coach.
Well, and if you're the coach, and because we all, whether we're technically a coach or not, we all should be coaching somebody. Like, be a mentor for somebody and have somebody be your mentor, right? If you are coaching somebody and you notice that they haven't changed in the past year, then you're not doing your job well enough. You need to evaluate, what am I doing wrong? So there's so many questions I can ask you. One of the things I did want to bring up, you had mentioned about the loss of your son. You reframed it as this gift that actually helped you. How do I ask this question? How did, because that's such people would be, that's something that affects you for the rest of your life. And some people see that as a curse on their life that they carry forever. How are you able to see that as something that actually, when you reframed it, moved you forward?
Well, first of all, it's a choice. I know plenty of people who choose to be in grief 20, 30 years later and really live that pain.
Yeah.
Which means it serves them a purpose.
Yeah.
It either creates relationships or feeling of connection or feeling of love or attention. And it's very unhealthy. But separating that from this is that, first of all, I cannot change the fact that he passed away. He was an amazing little human, 16 months old, always smiling with bright blue eyes. And when he passed away, I literally felt everything and nothing, if that makes sense. The emptiness inside was just a hollow scream. And my skin was so sensitive that touching me felt like you're burning me. My eyelashes hurt. And when I was willing in my grief and crying and going through all those motions, which are absolutely necessary, grief is a healthy emotion.
Yeah.
It just, natural grief does not last 20 years. And if it does, then we need to work on your brain because certain structures are overreacting, right?
Right.
One day I had a better day, I think after 2.5 years, and I woke up, I'm like, if I'm suffering like this after 1.5 years of my son dying, then my mom wouldn't survive this if I would take my life. And I grabbed onto that thought. And the first 2 years afterwards were quite challenging, because I would go, "Hi, my name is Dominika. My son just died." And people didn't know what to do with that information. But for me, it was therapeutic. I was throwing it out. And then I sat down one day when the emotions were not as raw. There were still triggers like I hate that word, defibrillators. The sound of them would put me into a little shock and I would start crying. Same with paramedic sound. When that would trigger me immediately. I would start shaking and crying, was done. But I learned to control those triggers. With time, they went away because I worked on that. And I went, what did he give me? And I realized that not many people get the chance to experience such beautiful love. He awakened in me the ability to love unconditionally. He allowed me to see what unconditional love is.
Yeah.
That was a gift. And from then on, I started learning to give love without expecting anything in return. And that was the beginning of the path. And that was also a gift to help few women along the way who lost their children. And it's very different losing a child that's alive compared to a child that's in your womb and you have a miscarriage. And it was, at one point, it was annoying because people would pity me and they would feel sorry for me. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. It's not my fault. And that was one of the steps that I had to realize, that his death is not my fault. We all have an expiration date. And there's a saying by, in Polish, I don't know, I think it exists in English, is let's hurry to love people, they leave so soon. And that became my mantra. Now, did I go overboard with the loving? Of course I did. Because before you stabilize, you have to kind of swing back and forth. Before
the pendulum has to swing, yeah.
Yes, before you find your equilibrium. But it is a gift. Because of that, I'm more sensitive. And I'm also an example of a woman that can have a healthy adult life without living in trauma.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it became an inspiration when I tell the story. Now, it can work, it doesn't have to. But there are ways we can move past trauma. And trauma doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. It happens for a reason, and it's not our fault. It just happens. Things just happen. As Les Brown says, life is lifing. And there is nothing you can do about what life is doing. But what you can decide on is, how am I going to take this? What am I going to do with this? And that was the beginning of my road of being able, instead of suffering for months and months because somebody said something mean or was rude, cutting it down to a few hours, sometimes half an hour, and being able to snap out of it. Because I also realized that all of those emotions are absolutely normal and necessary. We do need the whole variety. We do need the pain. We need the anger. We need the sadness. We need the excitement. We need the frustration. We need all of it, because that's part of a human experience. And we get to choose, when we grow as humans, how long we stay there. And then we actually have control over how our life looks like and how we experience life. Because, as Tony says, wherever focus goes, energy flows. Whatever you focus on grows. If you take a flower and you take care of it and you water it, it will grow. If you ignore it, it will die. And that's exactly the same thing with where you put your attention on and intention. And you get to choose how you experience life. And you get to also choose things you don't want to experience, because they enrich. If you wouldn't be sad, you would never be happy, because you wouldn't know what to compare it to. Comparison is a mandatory part of life. And our brain requires the vast exploration of senses. Something is warm, something is warmer, something is really warm, and something is hot. And depending on the gradation, the same thing with emotions. We need all of them. And then we get to decide what we like, what we don't like. And then we have the towards and away values and things. I mean, there's so many things amazing in the brain. And our brain creates neural pathways that then later on become the automatic part.
Yeah.
The automatic behavior. And it happens without us knowing. But when we grow and we start to realize those things, we get to choose which automatic behaviors serve us, and we can leave alone. Because if something is serving you and you enjoy that type of perception, That's fantastic. But on the other hand, if somebody doesn't like me, the truth is, I mean, I used to obsess over it. It would be months and years. Why don't you like me? And what did I do? And how can I change it? I'm like, there are plenty of people who I don't like, and they're living their life. They don't really care. Maybe that's a pretty cool approach. Like, why am I going to suffer because somebody doesn't like me? What is that giving to me? I'm going to be selfish, right?
All of the space that's rented in your head because of that one person. And this is really, the way you just worded that's really beautiful too about your son. And I did want to like acknowledge that and honor that, because I can see the strength, and I can see the way that you've turned the curse into a gift. And I love, my mentor always says this, that everything is a blessing depending on how you look at it. And those blessings might not appear right away, but as you work through them, as time goes on, the blessings appear. And the fact also, I love, you went through, like you said, a 3-year depression in this whole thing. And those periods of time seem like forever. It's like I'm never going to come out of this. But when you see somebody who came out of it and they're stronger on the other side, and they can talk about it so openly and freely, and the great things that have happened since then, it's amazing to see, because you can see like, okay, this is why I do this podcast, right? So you can see the examples of perseverance. You can see the examples of growth when you grow through something, what happens to you. It's really a powerful thing to be able to see. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And with the few minutes that we have left, I want to talk about the work you do with ADHD. I'm very curious, and I know this is a much deeper subject, but I want to go on maybe a surface level, and maybe another time we can jump into this deeper. But when you talk about working with ADHD, I don't have a specific question. I have a general question. What does that look like, and what do you do when you're working with people with ADHD?
Well, that's a beautiful question. So first of all, we look at the fact, was that person diagnosed, or do they think they have ADHD? That's the first thing. Second of all, we look at the ADHD type. There are 7 types, and most people don't have a clue that there are types. And the types depend on which part of your brain is overreacting or underperforming. And different behavioral patterns and different things happen to people with ADHD depending on the type. So when we realize that, and I prefer to send everybody to the Amen clinic that I work with to have a brain scan so they can determine if they actually do have ADHD, because we can physically see ADHD in your brain. It's not a guesswork anymore. It's not a questionnaire anymore. It can be, but we can actually see. And very often there are people go, well, I took all the medication, none work. Well, if none work, most likely you don't have ADHD, just to be clear. And when we see the scan, we know which type of ADHD you have. So if you have tunnel vision, or maybe you get overexcitement, or you cannot concentrate, or forget things, we create together strategies for you. Because the fact that, for example, you have tunnel vision and you concentrate and you do such a great work can be your asset, because you'll get more done than everybody else. But we need to restructure your day and activate or calm down different areas of your brain so they can also support you in whatever you have. And we create strategies just for you. For some people, it's, for example, adding Qigong, which is great for people with tunnel vision, 10 minutes a day. That's all it takes. For some people,
Qigong, like the ancient.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah.
And there are scientific studies showing how it beautifully influences some types of ADHD, not all of them. We look at the food you eat. We look at your blood work. Did you know that if you have ADHD and low magnesium, potassium, iron, or ferritin, it is directly correlated with how prominent ADHD shows up? You need those at an optimum level for your brain, not at a normal level. And very often we go, oh, you're in the norm. And I'm like, show me the results. Because Dr. Amen trained us in just 10 blood work samples that we know what is optimum for your brain. And most people are on the lower end. So if, for example, D3, omega-3, if you got ADHD, this becomes your mantra. You take high doses of omega-3 permanently, high quality. Period. It's non-negotiable. It's not medication, but it does wonders for the ADHD brain. And when we look at your blood work and we go, well, D3, let's say, right? Which is actually a hormone, not a vitamin, but we call it vitamin D3. And let's say the norms in America are between 30 and 100. If you're at 45, that does literally nothing for your brain. Dr. Amen recommends that it's between 60 and 80. And that's where we need to get that. Now, if you would like to check in with your doctor, please do. There are plenty of doctors who are functional medicine doctors that understand the optimum levels of blood work, not the norms. And that is so, so important that we do the basic things for ADHD, but we recreate your life. We structure it if it's proven. If not, then we rewire your brain. We work on skills and developing areas of your brain that have not developed the way we want them to. Because they're still developed, right? You're functioning. It's just, it's not serving you. So let's make it so it works for you. And we literally create new strategies for you, how you can function. So those areas of your brain who are acting differently than what we'd call normal, right, will be supporting your success instead of preventing you. And maybe that's going to sleep at different hours. Maybe it's switching food, because food does have influence on ADHD. Dr. Amen and his wife have a phenomenal book on ADHD and food and how to adjust. Time outside, time in front of TV, movement, all of those things play a role into how your brain functions, because ADHD is functioning of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty of things we can do to mitigate, right? Make those activities smaller and different. And there are, of course, a bunch of people who have very high, let's say, strong ADHD symptoms, and they do need to be on medication. But imagine if you get a brain scan, there's no more guesswork, because we know which part of your brain that is in. Psychiatrists will prescribe the right medication at the right time. No more trying. We'll see if this works, if that works. No, we don't try. We know. So there are plenty of things that you can cut your, and those people do need a medication, and then we work on strategies. And a lot of people who have ADHD symptoms, because tunnel vision doesn't mean you have ADHD. It just means you have tunnel vision and you get so excited. If we would look at this, then everybody who plays video games have ADHD, which is not true, right? Because you get concentrated, get so excited, you lose track of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an ADHD symptom, but we are looking for solutions. And sometimes people who are very passionate do have that type of behavior. And it doesn't mean they have ADHD. It might. So looking through the whole thing is so important, and then creating a life that serves you. And it's not necessarily big changes, but adapting. If you do have the ADHD and you are on medication, let's create life that makes you happy, makes you joyful, and you don't go, oh my God, and you stop using ADHD as an excuse and you use it as your superpower, because your brain can do that. My brain cannot do tunnel vision for the life of me. Half an hour and I'm done. And I don't have ADHD any form. I just don't. I like the diversity and I crave variety in my life. And one of ADHD symptoms is what I'm just describing. I don't have it, but it's my preference. So I created a life that I get to do that. Everybody gets that chance. Everybody gets that opportunity to create the life that works for them, and things that we need to, settle down, make it simpler, make it better, rewire. We're going to do that. And things that are your gift, your intuition, maybe your, concentration levels, let's use that to your advantage. But then let's work with it in a way that it supports your life instead of jumps in whenever it wants to. And there are ways to do that and to strategize that.
Whew, all right. Fascinating, Dominika. This has been so good. So much amazing information. I love what you do. And if people want more information about what you do, is the best way to find you Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, Your Brain Coach D. That's the best place to go, right?
Absolutely. My website, yourbraincoachd.com, or you can find me by my first and last name. I'm everywhere. I respond, I email, I chat with you guys. I'm happy to support anybody in general. for companies, we can use neuroscience. Oh, this is so awesome when we use neuroscience for stress reduction and anxiety reduction at workplace. Oh my God, these are so cool trainings. Public speaking, rewiring your brain, all of those things. Just do your research. Believe that you're the best version of you. And if you don't like something about you, just change it. As simple as that.
I love that. Make the choice to change it. You're allowed to, and you can. Cool. All right, Brain Coach D. Dominika, thank you so much for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
It was my absolute pleasure and honor. Thank you for having me.